Hey, it's Jason Creel. You're watching The Lawn Care Life, and I'm here with a friend of mine, Garrick, and we're going to give some advice. Garrick's in the lawn business, and I thought talking to him might be helpful for some of you guys that are starting up and, maybe in the first year, 2, 3 years of your business. And Garrick's kind of been through some of that and can share from his experiences, might be able to help some of you. So, Garrett, thanks for joining me. One, I want to just more so focus on people that are starting out in the lawn business. So, what if you, in your experience, what would you say being a few years into this thing and having some successes and yet facing some of the struggles? What has been the most challenging part of getting a lawn business up off the ground from scratch?
Well, I think one of the most challenging things for me has just been having the right expectations with my personality style, my approach to business. I thought year one is just going to be so much business. I'm hiring 4 guys, and it just didn't turn out that way. However, I think a little bit slower growth for me personally was a good thing. It was just emotionally challenging just because I didn't have the right expectations when I started.
What would you say as far as starting off? A lot of people, the main question I get over and over again is how to get customers. And I try to explain to people it's not there's multiple ways to get customers, but it's hard just to say, well, year one, I'm going to have 500 customers, or not 500. For some people, 50 is
Yep.
very challenging. So, what was your experience the first year as far as getting customers? Was that plowing, a tough road, and how did you go about getting them?
Well, I used a couple of different lead generation websites. Like, I don't know if you mentioned it before, but Thumbtack was a good one for me just because I didn't personally have to go through neighborhoods and knock on doors. I chose not to go that route. However, I think that's very effective. I just didn't do it. And really so I started at the end of the growing season, and all I was doing was cutting, doing maintenance, trimming shrubs, and but once so I started like September. Once we got into February, I started getting a lot of requests through that avenue with Thumbtack, and I think I signed up to be a porch service provider, and just started getting a few little miscellaneous calls. But really, once I got into March, it was a lot for one guy. So I think I ended up with about, once we got into April, I think I had about 40 lawn maintenance customers that first season. And I went through that first season by myself. I did not grow any more than that. Once we got into May, everything, all the requests slowed down a lot. But since it was my first season doing it, I was trying to develop my systems on how I approached the yard, how I processed the yard. And that was also the time I started doing my tests, my studying for fertilization, weed control. So that was a good first year. It was manageable with 40 customers, just me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes I think people, the ideal time probably is to start I'm saying starting in the spring's when you're going to get the most business, but I don't necessarily think it's bad to start in the fall, especially if you had and I know you didn't, but some people have like a full-time job. It's like, if you could sort of start in the fall and at least get your feet wet, you're going to be more prepared come March of the next year. Sometimes when people start in March, you start when you start is the point, but I mean, sometimes starting in March, you're not fully ready for what is coming, and so it hits you too fast.
Well, I'll tell you this: I learned a ton in the fall just by quoting for leaf jobs. I realized real quickly that what I had in my head with how I'm going to quote a yard was too cheap. too cheap. So starting in the fall definitely helped me approach the spring for that reason. It was a little bit slower start, but I realized quickly I am on lawns a lot longer than I think I will be whenever I'm just estimating early on. So.
Yeah. I think still today that one of my biggest problems is I almost every single day think I can get more done than I actually get done. I do it almost every single day. I print off 20 yards, I get 15 done. And I'm like, well, why did I think I could do 20 today when I couldn't do, But anyway, better that than print off 5 and get done at lunch. So, you survived your first year, and then you started, second year you started growing, you started, merging into weed control, and a lot of people, watch my channel. Some of them are into that, some of them are not into that. But for somebody like you who's done both and sort of is still doing both, how do you, how was it making that jump over into that, and then how do you compare the two? Pros and cons of both a mowing business versus a weed control and fertilization business.
Well, whenever I decided to get licensed to treat yards, I had a customer base already there, which was nice. So out of I guess at that point, probably 60 customers that I had as I was approaching that second season, I was able to go to 60 folks and say, hey, now I can offer this service as well. And, probably half of them signed up for that spring. So that was also a good slow start to learning how to do weed control and how to fertilize. So that was definitely a pro for doing both. I tried to hire that year, and I think we probably grew to maybe 70 lawn maintenance accounts and maybe 6 fertilization accounts. And what I was finding is I still wasn't there to where I wanted to hire a full-time person. Therefore, training suffered because I was bringing part-time person in, and I felt like my quality was dropping on the maintenance side. I mean, even little things like a callback for the guy not weed eating around the mailbox, and so that into that year, I made the choice to move forward. Fertilizing only, but I have some customers that I've grandfathered in as I'm still doing maintenance on some, but a significant portion of those maintenance customers, the guy that was working with me part-time, I helped him transition as the sole provider for those customers. I wasn't doing any fertilization for them. So the pro to do both is you can, you're a one-stop shop kind of company. You can do the maintenance, you can do the fertilization. However, given my bandwidth, I didn't feel like I could manage that effectively and keep a good name for myself with running roots and a good word of mouth. So he gave him a ton of customers, and then I kept a few, the high ticket, but not a ton of maintenance that needs to be done on those yards. I kept those, and now I'm growing only fertilization weed control. So the con where I am now is that I do get a lot of calls about, can you do everything? And I've made the choice to not do everything. And I do miss out on some business. We've tried to get creative and piggyback off each other. I've got a couple of lawn maintenance providers that I'll use, but I don't sub them out. I don't want to get the calls for the missed grass around the mailbox. So those guys are accountable to that customer for that, and the customer's okay using both of us to service their yard. So
how has the Lawn Care Life YouTube channel just greatly impacted your overall success? Yeah, no,
that's right.
I ain't gonna ask that. So now that you're several years into it, and having at least moderate success, you survived. You didn't go bankrupt your first year or two. What advice would you give somebody who's starting off first year or two, or maybe even somebody that's considering making the jump? Maybe they're thinking, I'm going to start a lawn business, or I've been doing it on the side. I'm thinking about quitting my job. it is a little intimidating, especially if you have a full-time income you're about to walk away from and think, well, I'm going to go out here and have a lawn business. And because the truth of the matter is, if nobody writes you a check, you're not getting paid, and then it rains, you don't get paid. There's a lot of variables, and yet I'm a huge, proponent of lawn business and self-employment, and I think the potential is great, and it's, works out for a lot of people. So with that being said, like what do you tell somebody who's thinking about making this jump, or maybe is in the early stages of it and is discouraged? How do you give them hope?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from a couple different backgrounds with car washing and oil changing and working in construction, and I'll tell you that hands down, I love the working environment that lawn care provides. If you enjoy being outside, it is outstanding. If you enjoy people, you better enjoy people. It's also outstanding. But I think the biggest thing for me, looking back, is I wish I would have found mentors earlier, and to find people that are a year or two or 5 or 10 or 30 years beyond where you are currently. Go get coffee with them, join some groups, learn, have a humble approach, and just try to figure out how can I glean from this person, but how can I also add value to these little groups that I can be a part of, and do that. And I feel like that has really, really taken me to a different place than I would have been on my own, a much better place. But I would say, whatever it takes in the beginning to get involved in those type of relationships, that you'll get much more return doing that than trying to wing it by yourself. The little one-man show, I'm going to do it my way and I don't care to learn, is not going to work long term.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's what's good about, in general, the lawn industry. Not everybody's like that, but in general, I've found that there's a lot of people willing to help other people. It's more of a camaraderie than, of course, we're competing and whatever, but people are willing to help each other. And I guess in general, that's good life advice. I try to find people to help me with parenting and marriage, all kind of areas of life. To think that somebody's been doing it a lot longer, that you can't learn from them, would just be foolish. So, good advice. Thanks, Garrick, for coming on here. I think the people, if you want to leave a comment, ask a question, Garrick watches the channel. He might could reply to your comment, or I can reply. But if you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to hopefully give you good advice, expose you to other people. I certainly don't know everything, so I have to get other people on here. But and then we'll hopefully can provide some more helpful content, and you can check out these other suggested videos. Thanks a lot.